Hello everyone and welcome back to Garage Time. This week I'm going to work on the deck lid and improving the gaps between the lid and the body, and also do a little bit of customization to the deck lid so I can make a custom grille for this opening. So please stay tuned. This week it's improving the Porsche gaps again.
Garage Time.
All right, here's the fit of the deck lid as it is, and it's really not too bad. In fact, I really am happy with the way that the shape along the back comes together. So this is really well lined up here. That's great. Same thing on this side. This is very well lined up. And the gap, this is my 3mm gap checker again. The gap along this side is really good. And the same thing is true for this side. 3mm here. So I have it in the correct position left to right. And I also have it in the correct position relative to the tub in the back. Now the part that needs improvement is up along the top. So up here, this gap is 3. This is good. But as we come along the top half of the car, this is really tight right here. This is less than 1mm. And also from this side, if I put this across the top, there's a tiny bit of a mismatch in this position and also in this position. This is not perfect right here. It looks like the lid can come up a little bit. So I'm going to adjust the hinges to get this, this corner up a little bit, and then I'm going to have to do something about this gap here on the top, which is just too tight. And then in terms of customization, I'm going to probably make my own grille that goes along the back here. And these features here are not needed. I'm not sure what these bumps are for. But I just don't think I'm going to need them. And so to improve the clean lines of this new grille, I'm going to remove these bumps and potentially remove these bumps here in this opening as well. I'm going to need something to attach a perforated panel to the backside. So I can definitely use these factory holes here and probably here and here. But these are a little bit redundant and kind of detract from the straight lines that are going to be part of the grille. So I'm going to do a little bit of metal work on removing these bumps. Okay, I was able to add some shims underneath that forward mounting bolt. So there's a shim between the hinge and the deck lid. And that really works out well for getting this height to the right place. So now the deck lid is fitting flush across the top. And also against the body here, it's fitting really nice. And this gap has opened up a little bit. It's probably 4.5. So that's something to be careful with. Down here, it is like 3.5. Down here, it's okay. And then I made sure to keep this down here tight or even. So that's good. I'm going to do the other side and try to improve the height on the other side. Right here, on this side, this portion of the deck lid is also sitting a little bit low. I think you can see the gap there. I'm rocking the straight edge across this. So I'm going to put some additional shims on this hinge to try to lift this up. Okay, now those shims have been helpful in getting this height even. I now have a good even height on this corner, but unfortunately here, the gap is too large. That's probably 6mm, and it's also too high. So if I continue this curve, it's not smooth. This bumps into here, and I don't like that. So now I'm going to take my Sharpie and make some notes on the deck lid where it needs to be bent up. So I'm gonna physically hammer and dolly this to get the low areas pounded up a little higher. because I'm out of adjustments now with the hinge. The other telltale sign about the hinge adjustments are that, you know, it's good here in the corner. I have it good here in the corner, but here in the center, it's not good. So I can rock this in the center. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to remove some of those shims I just put in, try to go back to where I was, make it even here in the center, and then just note, like I said, where I'm going to hammer this back into the right shape. Okay, now here's my plan. I've just written on the paint the areas that are out of spec. So all the way up into here, it's good. G for good. And then here's where it starts to deviate. Remember, I've put the hinges and the adjustments with the shims in the best average position. So I have it good over about, this is probably 70% of the hood is good. And I'm going to now bend on the hood to bring this area up. So the notation means this is a 1/8. This 1/8 of an inch low right here. See the gap? So that needs to come up 1/8 of an inch. And then down to here, there's another G down here. This part is good. Right here, it could be a little bit better. So I'm going to be bringing this up slightly. And then to me, these lines just represent kind of the areas I need to focus. A little bit here and a lot right here. So the bigger the distance, the more it needs to come up. Same notation on this side. There's a line coming down here, and when it gets to the kind of the rear of the car, I don't need to do very much, but here towards the corner, I need to do a lot. So that line just reminds me where I'm hammering, how to spend my time. So I'm going to set up the camera back on the stand, and I'll do as much of this as I can with the Decklid mounted to the car, but to get back here, I'm probably going to have to take it off. Okay, we've made some really good progress. This is now perfect all along the side, all the way, almost all the way up to the very top. Right up to about here, it's good, and then here it gets wrong really fast. And rather than, you know, pound on the tub, I'd rather work on this cheap Decklid. You know, this is a $200 Decklid. So I am going to have to take the Decklid off to hammer this area harder. I tried to put this underneath here, the block of wood method, and then close it on the block of wood. But these Decklid hinges just aren't strong enough. Like for instance, the door, I was able to use the block of wood method to really twist that door into shape. But I don't want to do it here on the Decklid because I'm likely just to bend the hinges. These Decklid hinges are not strong enough. Okay, now before I remove this Decklid from the car, I just want to confirm everything's in the right place. So I'm really happy with all these areas. The whole back of the car, the way it comes across the taillights and the bumperettes is perfect. So I don't want to move it anymore on the hinges. All the way up into this corner, it's good. It's good all the way across over to here, but then this gap starts to get too narrow. So I am going to mark this with my Sharpie and remove some material from the Decklid. Now, I could remove material from this edge of the Decklid, but because this is a curved edge and it has this slope to it, I think it's more difficult to remove it from here. And I'm already happy with the parallel lines that I have on the right gap and the left gap. So in my mind, it's easier to just remove metal from here. And I'm not exactly sure why I need to remove metal since these are both factory Porsche parts. But you know, these cars are old. These are parts that have been kicked around, including the tub. You know, this thing's been left in the Nevada desert for decades. This hood was when I bought it, it came off the car. It wasn't on a car, it was on a shelf somewhere. So who knows why these parts don't fit perfectly, but I'm just gonna take care of it. I'm gonna grind this edge down. the folded over hem is no longer connected to the outer skin because I ground it down probably over 1 millimeter. So I'm left with this, this open seam that is going to need to get welded. So I'll weld, you know, everywhere that I ground down, I'll weld it and try to keep the distance the same. But before we weld it, let's make sure it fits in the car first. There's a quick shot of the hinge marking with the primer. So it's pretty clear where the hinges go now. Okay, so I have the hood back in the same place, so nothing changed back in the rear, and I love the way that shape continues all the way around. It looks really smooth. And then up here, it's much, much better. So I don't want to say it's perfect, but I was lucky enough. I mean, I'd rather be lucky than good. This is flush across the back. It's a little bit low right here, but the corner, this corner is perfect. So I nailed the corner. From this view, it's also looking really nice. There's just a real small section, probably a 2-inch section now, that needs to come up just a little bit right there. So I'll erase my Sharpie lines, create some new Sharpie lines. Next time this comes off, I will tap this up just a little bit. So now we're like 99% there. And then as we follow this gap across the top, it's 3 millimeters, 3 millimeters. This is a little tight right here, call it 2.5, close enough. It's a little tight right here. This is where I started to grind. I might grind a little bit more right there. And then it's 3, 3, 3, a little bit more on the corner. So I can take a smaller grinder and fine tune this just a little bit. This gap is a little bit big right here. I might actually add some more material to the deck lid to close this up a little bit. This gap is probably 5, 5.5. But down here it's about 4. And this will move over. The deck lid can slide around. You can see that gap is sliding around. These hinges are really weak. But so I may, while I'm welding this right here, I probably will weld a little bit on the edge right here, just because it's probably 30 minutes worth of work. And if I can get a little bit better gap, it's totally worth it. Now's the time to do it. Gonna raise this little tiny section right here just a little bit more and then call it good enough. So before I can weld this edge here, I need to get rid of paint on both sides. Okay, I'm about to weld the edge back together here, but before I do that, I'm gonna lose reference of where the edge I want is gonna be, because I'm gonna be adding material and blending it in with the TIG welder. It's gonna change. So before I start welding, I'm gonna put down a piece of tape and then I'm gonna mark it with a Sharpie so that it doesn't melt. Okay guys, this might be a better view of this edge that I cut. You can see I'm flexing it with my finger. So I need to clamp this closed and just fuse it together. I'm not gonna add much filler at all. I'm just gonna go along and fuse that together. Okay, now you can see this edge has been welded. It's a little lumpy. Obviously, there's a couple high spots where I just was having trouble with the welding. This is what the edge looks like up close. Just a real tiny weld bead. And it stops right there. So now I'm just gonna lay this flat and just start working that edge based on these measurements that were taken before. Luckily this tape didn't even get too toasty. All my numbers are still on there, so I'm gonna verify those numbers and grind it to those numbers and make sure that the seam is nice and strong. All right, I got this edge nice and blended into the existing line. So the waviness is, for the most part, gone, and I can't wait to get it on the car. All right, now before I trial fit this again on the car, I thought I would take care of these bumps. I'm gonna I'm going to remove the bumps here and here and here and here. I'm going to leave the ones in the center for some attachment on a custom grill I want to do. And I think these bumps are for like a rear windshield wiper, and I'm definitely not going to use that. So I'm going to start cutting into this and finding out what I need to do to weld it flat so I can have a smooth look across the deck lid there. So rather than weld a new piece in here, I believe I can just put a relief in here and just hammer this down and then weld the relief. Okay, here's the back side of the hood, and the rebending method worked really well on these flanges. I just have to trim these little peaks that were created when the metal came around. So there's a little bit of welding where I made the tin snip cuts, so I'll just touch that with the welder and then grind the tops off, and these will be done, which is awesome. Now over here, this is slightly different because this inner structure is in the way. So there's no way I'm going to be able to fold this double shape over flat. And then I also want to remove a bulge on the far side. So I'm going to come across straight here with the cutter and then add some new material to make this flange continuous. Okay, so now I have this new hole to fill in. It's kind of like a little mouth shape, and the flange to put back right here. So I think I'm going to put the flange in first, so I have a little thickness here, and that makes the welding the mouth a little bit easier. So I'm going to make this part a little longer than it's supposed to be, weld it in, and then grind it smooth after I've already had a chance to weld this piece here in too. Okay, here's this flange on the bottom welded in place, and it's hanging down lower than it needs to be, but I needed it to be bigger so that I could do the welding, and then I'll trim it once everything's said and done. But now I'm going to make the patch that goes in that mouth-shaped hole. All right. This is welded in, not ground down, but the welds are there. Also, the bottom flange is there, not fully smoothed out, but good enough for now. The welding is done, and backing up, I like the smoother look without the bumps, even though right now it's hard to tell. Everything's all funky colors. And so what's left now is to continue to add more material to this passenger side and just make that a little wider and then do a final fit on the car. All right, guys, I have welded on the top of this right side edge of the deck lid, and it's still very bumpy, wavy. I tried to add as much filler as I could, trying to make this thing just a tad wider. That's supposed to close the gap on the right just a little bit, closer to 3. So I'm going to put it on the car now and see how it looks. Hopefully things didn't get too distorted, so I don't take it off again. But we have those bumps debumped, some holes filled in, and the flanges smoothed out. So we got a nice clean hole here for the deck lid grill. All right, it's on there again, and I am super happy with the position of the hood or the deck lid. Everything's lined up in the back just like it always was. The gap on the left is ideal. I mean, it's exactly 3. All the way up here, it's 3. This is nice and level on the top, going across there. 3 millimeters all the way along here. This is exactly 3. And then this spot here is, this is unfinished, but the little bit that I added on there is good. I might need to add just a little bit more and obviously smooth it out. It's still kind of light right here, Right here it's good. So it's a little uneven, but this is just work in progress, and I'm going to continue to perfect this gap on this side. Plus, I'm going to allow the primer to build up on both sides, and that's going to close it up a little too. But, you know, some more additional work on the right gap. It's a little bit bigger, but in general, this is looking really good. And I'm also happy with these modifications that were made to the grille. It's going to become more sleek once the grille is in there and once everything's painted. But I'm really liking the way this turned out. Okay guys, that's all the time I have for today. This is a good stopping point, finishing up the deck lid, getting those gaps as close as possible. Definitely still a little bit of work to do on the passenger side, but it's very, very close, and it's almost ready to be epoxy primered and you know, get this thing ready for the paint process, which I cannot wait to be done with metalwork and start that paint process. So thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we'll see you next week. See you guys.